Hi, everybody. John Farian here with LiveLARGE Universe, and we have another great show for you here tonight with my new friend, Seth Schreiber. How's it going tonight, Seth?
Pretty good.
Good, good. Where are you located again? You're out in west central Minnesota, right?
Yeah, so I'm actually from small town Minnesota. Fergus Falls is probably the biggest city of any size, and
Yeah,
about halfway in between kind of the North Dakota border to about an hour south of Fargo,
very cool.
and kind of off here in the country on a farm.
Yep.
Yeah, decent
Awesome.
sized farm, but
Awesome. That's only a couple hours from where I grew up myself, too, in Brainerd, Minnesota. So I know that area actually pretty well. And I've been out through Wapaton. I've been through Fergus Falls a bunch of times, too. And I'm almost guarantee you I've driven through the town that you guys are you're in there as well, too. But how has winter been this year so far for you, too? It's been a pretty crappy winter there in Minnesota, or has it been epic?
yeah. No, it's I think I've gotten out on a sled around here maybe one time. It snowed just enough and blew. It blows all the time here. I mean, flat
Yeah.
as a table and ditches sock in sometimes, but we've it usually only takes a couple inches to fill in a ditch, and there's literally been like one day where I could actually get around a little bit, and there
Yeah.
was so much dirt on the snow it wasn't even worth it.
Yeah, even out west here in Washington, it's been like one of the worst seasons we've ever had, and even with that, we're still riding, right? And so, here it's like you can literally change seasons by driving up and down the mountains and changing elevation. So, at my house today, it was literally like 74 degrees here. We were riding motorcycles today, washing the Jeep in the driveway. But literally just a couple days ago, I was up in the mountains riding, and had a foot of fresh snow up there, a little wet and slushy, but it wasn't too bad. So that's the way the world works, though. But next winter, again, we're guaranteed a good winter next year, then, right? Is that how it works?
Oh, I sure hope so. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, everybody's coming in and watching. Just so you guys know, thanks for coming in and watching. What I always encourage everybody to do who's here as a viewer is to go into the comments right now and let us know where you're watching from. I'm sure that Seth's got a lot of friends and family who are eager to see him on the show tonight here, and everybody else who follows as well. You guys know the routine. Jump into the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. I see, as usual, our buddy Todd Swing here from Minnesota as well. He's from Plymouth, Minnesota. He's one of the regulars watching the show. Love it, Todd. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for chiming in. And let's see who else is here in the comments and where you're watching from. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to let you know that if you get in here, share it. Also, you also get in a chance to win a prize. So every time we do an episode, I give away a prize for those who share the show out. And so usually every, I don't know, 5, 6 shows we do, we end up giving away a prize. And so right now, the current prize that's up for grabs is this Backcountry first aid kit. So this is a first aid kit you could throw in your truck, in your trailer, in the back of your sled, in your backpack, on your Avi pack. If you have a boat, if you have a side-by-side, this is going to be a great product no matter where you go. And so everything you need for backcountry riding or just being out and about, doing all the exciting power sports items that we do along the way. So again, everybody, thanks for jumping in the comments, letting us know where you're watching from, and then get in there and make sure you share the show out because we want to give Seth here a little love tonight. And our goal with this show is always to educate people. So the show is really focused on snowmobile safety, education, just positive growth of the sport. And Seth, earlier this week, I put a post out. I think it was almost a week ago now, a little less than a week ago. I had thrown a post out there of like, hey, I've got some openings coming up here for my show, and you were the first one to jump in and send me a message, and here we are. So that's how we got to meet each other. What inspired you to reach out?
Excuse me. I've heard of you before. I wasn't super familiar with your platform and everything,
Yep.
but I'm always eager to like reach out, get my name out, and like support other people in the process too. So I figured I'd give it a shot, see what you were about, and
Yeah.
it seemed like a good match. So now we're here.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we set up a call earlier in the week, and I think we were on the phone for, 45 minutes, almost an hour, I think it was, before we were done. And I was kind of challenging you of like, well, what do you have that you think we can teach people? And it's kind of interesting because as I heard your story, the tagline of the show, this, idea of a 20-year-old backcountry sledder with wisdom beyond his years, right? It's like, and I think, there's a lot of people who are in the same boat. But the reality is, I think there's probably a little bit of a stereotype or a stigma with quote unquote a 20-year-old sledder who may be out there and just out shredding hard, being irresponsible, not really thinking about safety, education, backcountry, avalanche safety, preparing for a trip. They might just wing it and go head out there too. And the more and more I got to talk to you, I'm like, wow, this kid's actually got his stuff together, and it's pretty interesting to kind of hear your story and tell it. So that's our goal tonight, is kind of get it through here and help you share your story, maybe give you a little visibility for things like your business that we'll get into later tonight too. So that'll be fantastic. Awesome. Well, Seth, tell us a little bit about yourself. Just give us some background on you and who is Seth Schreiber. Let us know who you are a little bit.
I'm from here. I was born in southern Minnesota, but moved up here at a pretty young age, and haven't really got super far from home. Kind of born and raised here for the most part, or raised here, I guess, for the most part. Grew up, started farming when I was relatively young. Dabbled in the power sports stuff a little bit when I was younger, and kind of got to where I'm at now. Still doing the farming stuff in the spring and fall, and I'll probably dabble in it a bit during the summer too.
Yeah.
Winter is obviously kind of the off season for us, just being produce farmers, not in any livestock or anything. And I get to do this stuff with my business and sledding and stuff a lot more. Went to school in Breckenridge, kindergarten through graduation high school, and then I went to college right across the river in Wapaton, and I pursued a diesel tech degree there, just a general diesel, non-sponsored program.
Okay.
And I actually went and worked for a local John Deere company, RDO, for a couple years,
Yeah.
and I got some decent experience under my belt doing things from lawnmowers to combines, everything you can think of, top to bottom, and done quite a bit of stuff on the farm too, mechanical and personal vehicles and all this power sports stuff now too.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome. I think about, it sounds like you grew up kind of on the family farm. Is that a fair statement?
for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you kind of grown up in this farm experience. As you got ready to go to college, as you went through high school, college, you had an interest in it. You went and got diesel tech. You told me on the phone earlier this week that the diesel tech scholarship was, or not scholarship, but the degree that you were going for was ultimately like with the idea of you could use that as a process on the farm, right? Like to maintain and fix the
Yep.
equipment, the
Yep.
tractors, the all the different vehicles and equipment you have there too. But as you got into it, you started to find like you can actually go work, have a profession with it as well, and then that kind of, we'll find out a little bit later in the show, talk to you about, kind of inspired you with some of your business as well. It's you've been able to apply your degree into kind of quote unquote, practical life, a job, professional life, and maybe a little bit into your personal passions as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about your history of sledding. Kind of like, when did you get into sledding? I mean, I'll just throw it out there. Some people, the second they're old enough to stand up and sit up, the kids put them on a kitty cat, right? Was that your story, or did you have a different story now going, from your youth into current state of? Tell us a bit about your sledding past.
No, I don't go quite as far back as a lot of like the super hardcore guys do, but it definitely ramps up pretty hard for me. I mean, there's memories for sure when I was pretty young and dad had like a old F chassis due. We'd go rip around the yard a little bit on it. And I was
Yeah,
like, I always thought that was pretty cool, just getting out on stuff like that. And eventually got on a family member loaner, like 120, a little skidoo, and got pretty hooked on that. Got moved up to a full size sled, was a 380 Grand Touring, and progressively went up to the ranks to 550, and then kind of jumped the gun a little bit and got on 800s pretty early, and then got really into it with all that stuff. Like the first year I really got hardcore into sledding, I think I was like fourth grade and put on 1,000 miles around home. Never
that's
really got
awesome.
out west, but it was a
Yeah,
super good winter here, probably one of the better ones I've ever seen, and just rode a ton. And everybody, like family, was super into it too, and it was just like around here it was super good, booming. So I got
yeah.
miles on easy. It was great.
Yeah. So when you were kind of through your teens and before you ever went out west riding, like what would a typical ride be? I mean, who are you going out with? Was it your mom and dad? Do you have siblings? Was it friends? Like, who were your riding partners in your local area, and like what would a typical ride look like? Through the Midwest.
So I have pretty young grandparents on my dad's side, and
Okay.
they're still into sledding now, actually. And I mean, that's fourth grade was a while ago for me. So I mean, they were even
Yeah.
younger yet then, and they were still really into it. So it was
Yeah.
always me, dad and a ton of relatives around here that were into sledding too, and them and a lot of other family friends. I mean, the riding group could be anywhere from just me repping around the yard, or we could go on poker runs and stuff around here, and there'd be
Nice.
30, 40 people in the group. It was crazy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, is there a point in time that you finally got to make your first trip out west, or that you aspire to? Like, what was the first time it was on your radar that there was different kind of riding other than Minnesota or North Dakota, wherever you're at? You know, kind of right on the border there. But did you see videos? Did you like? How did it get on your radar that a trip out west was in your future?
So part of the riding group was always older and more experienced. They've been out west and stuff. And
Yep.
by the time I started getting into riding, there was social media was starting to pick up a lot. And watching sled necks and stuff like that. It's obviously different terrain than
Yeah. Yeah.
flat out in Minnesota. So get to see that kind of stuff, and it was always cool to me. And I was like, wow, that'd be sick to go ride out there. And be like part of that, be something like that one day. And one thing led to another, and somebody in a riding group ended up creating or inviting kind of everybody out on this trip. And it was a first time trip for quite a few people on that too. It was a bigger group out there, but it was a trip to West Yellowstone.
Okay.
And I think I was in middle school. I'm pretty sure I was seventh grade. It was like March of seventh grade for me. And
Okay.
we went out there, and it was definitely nothing like everything was wrong, like counter steering, trying to get on edge. It was crazy.
Yep.
Get off the trail, and the first thing I see was like this little, I don't even know what kind of slope it was. In my head, I probably remember it being a lot steeper than it really was, but
Yeah.
it was definitely not. It was more than the riverbank we had at home, and that was kind of the closest, gnarly riding we had was when the riverbank got big in spots. But yeah,
Yeah,
I got
it's
I pretty
amazing. I
wet
mean,
on.
I'll just interject real quick because, like, being from Minnesota, I'll tell people, like, the average snowfall in Minnesota over, kind of of history, it's usually in the 40 to 60 inches of snowfall per year. And frankly, lately, there's been a lot of years where you've gotten way less than that, right? Then every once in a while, you get a spike year where it gets a little more than that. But just historically speaking, I think 40 to 60 inches is a pretty standard average. And now you're going out to places where, heck, they might get 20, 30, 40 inches in one snowfall over a couple of days, right? Type of thing. And so, one weekend snowfall out in the mountains can equal what an entire season is there. And it stacks up, and stacks up. And I think I remember my first trip out west, coming similar from Minnesota. It was back in 2007. And I literally remember the first time I saw like some kind of a structure or a building that had literally like 6 or 7 feet of snow on top of it. And you're looking at it going like, oh my goodness, I didn't know snow could get that deep, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So crazy experience. So that first few years, did it become like kind of an annual trip pretty quickly? Like, did you go almost every year then? Was it just 1 week a year, or what was your typical trips looking like over the years?
So it was started off kind of spotty. It was that first trip, and it really got our feet wet and everything. And
Yeah,
we liked it. Like the group can say, like everybody had a great time. It was awesome. It was just something to kind of experience it. It just kind of didn't work out again for another couple of years. And we ended up going to the only time I've ever actually been there was the south side of the Bighorns. Was our next trip,
okay.
and they had like it was pretty wicked snow for being the second time there, and that's a pretty weird spot to ride into. Like I've ridden the Bighorns a lot on the north side, and the south side was a fair bit different too. And yeah, that one that's really like that was it was pretty fast. Like the first one, really got me into it. And the second one, we had good snow, and the one
Yeah,
guy we had with was really experienced, and he kind of like was making everybody push pretty hard. So I was actually ramping up pretty quick, and I was like, wow, there's a lot to this. Like
yeah,
this is a lot, so much more than just riding at home and keeping the skis on the ground and that kind of stuff. And it's like crazy what you can all do out there. And it was that second trip was a huge eye opener,
yeah.
just seeing the kind of terrain you can get in and everything like that. And then it basically went till I don't think I started consistently going on trips till my about senior year college started, that kind of stuff. So it's only been the last 3-4 years I've consistently been going on more than one trip a year. So
Gotcha. In our discussion this week, we talked a little bit about it. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think now you've kind of been the one that's trying to coordinate a lot of the trips for kind of you and your buddies or other family members or whatever that are going out with you. Is that true?
Actually, the group we have, that's a bunch of guys that are like my
Okay.
age. We're all super adamant on it. There's one guy that kind of we all get get together and plan the trips pretty hard. We
Gotcha.
all kind of watch the snowpack and everything. We're all pretty
Okay.
familiar with a lot of different places.
Gotcha.
But one guy's kind of like our travel advisor. He'll book places,
Perfect.
and we all kind of collaborate to go with. So it's a
Yeah.
group effort for sure.
Yeah, there's always an instigator in the group that's always pushing everybody, and yeah, everybody chimes in and helps out. But like, talk to me a little bit about because this is the part of the conversation where this week where I kind of was starting to challenge you a little bit in the discussion. Like, well, what do you think people can learn from you? And have you had any like accidents or incidents? And at first your reaction was like, no, really, nothing goes wrong. Everything goes pretty smooth. And then I started hearing a little bit about some of the stories that were there, and I'm like, there is actually some stories of I mean, I'll just reference a couple of them, and you can go into some detail later here, but there's been like sled damage, there's been people being injured on the hill, that kind of thing too. But in your mind, as you told those stories, you kind of were pretty calm and cool about it, with the idea that like, well, yeah, those things happen, but none of it was a big deal because we were prepared. We had XYZ equipment, tools, whatever. And so what I'd love to do is to kind of, and it's something I want to remind everybody is that if you're here watching this and you're a Western rider, the experience that we have as somebody who lives out west and rides every weekend in the mountains near us is very different than being a Midwest rider who is traveling, 12 plus hours or more, to get to the mountains and to make a big trip about it. Like there's a lot of planning and strategy that goes into a trip like that too. And it goes from, tow vehicles to trailers to tools to, having everything you can imagine. So talk to me a little bit about maybe one of your recent trips of, over the last year or two that, what have you guys do into putting into the planning? Like, what do you pack? Like, let's go through the list. Let's start with like, how do you roll? Like, is it one truck, two trucks, trailers thing? Like, how do you guys typically pack up the sleds and the trucks and head out?
Well, more times than not, it ends up two trucks at least, because usually the size of the group, we're running 5 to 6 guys, and
Yeah.
we always have an extra sled with, just because renting is not always fun, and we're not trying to fix stuff on the hill. We already have so much going into these trips. We'd rather just bring spare sled with. So if
Amen.
something does
Yep.
happen, we just can hop on something like that. And we all have tons. We're on pretty much all Polaris and do stuff, so we all have a ton of extra parts. We usually bring with tooling. I mean, it's a huge program. We use extra gear with stuff like that. I mean, it's when you put 12 hours and all this money and time into planning trips, we usually pack a lot more than we end up using, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of extra effort too. But if we even have to use some of it, it pays for itself, because it's so much harder to get when you're out there, and you got to pay so much for it and all that kind of stuff. And we've
Yeah.
learned that over the last couple of years, and every time we go, it seems like we're more refined with what we're bringing. And we
Yeah.
know a little bit more what to expect and everything like that.
Yeah,
So
I think, I mean, one of the things that you guys are doing that I learned many years ago the same way you did is that, yeah, I mean, you go on these trips and it's like kind of a, once a year trip type of thing, and you got a lot of time and energy invested into it. Literally bringing an extra sled is something that I started doing a long time ago, and it's kind of one of those things that continued to do. Is I try to always, like for my wife and I, we're the only ones in our family currently that ride, but we have 3 sleds, and so we always have a backup sled available in case something happens. One's in the shop or something. You've always got another one to ride. You're not missing out on your riding season, or in your case, an entire trip in some cases.
yep.
Because yeah, like $300, $400, $500 a day to rent a sled in some cases.
Oh yeah.
If you have an extra one, that you can bring with, that's great. But the other thing is like parts. A lot of people bring A-arms and handlebars and handlebar warmers and who knows what else, bumpers even sometimes too. What kind of sled parts do you guys typically find you're bringing extra with?
Pretty much front end stuff. I mean, especially if we don't have like any Polaris guys running stock arms on those. Especially, we've had so many instances of guys just ripping front ends off with those,
Yeah.
and they're all usually running aftermarket stuff, and we still bring usually a front end kit. Like this last trip, we just had a guy on a Gen 5 ripped off, upper on the left side exploded, ripped a ball joint out of the lower. It stayed in
Wow.
the spindle, twisted the spindle. The ski was basically dangling by a bent tie rod.
Yeah.
And yeah, that ended up getting pretty much rode out, put in a toboggan, and towed back to the lodge. And I actually spaced for once on a trip I have a whole 36-inch front end sitting in my shop, and I did not bring it with. But
Uh-oh.
fortunately, the guy was out anyway for the rest of the trip for a hand injury. So I could have fixed it in the trailer, but we did have that spare with anyway, so we don't have to wrench on stuff. That's kind of the whole
Yeah.
point of that. But
Yep. Nope.
it
Absolutely.
ended up being not a big deal anyway. So
Yeah. And so another real common, I would say, I don't you call it a mistake, call it a, lack of planning, strategy, whatever you want to call it. But there's a lot of people that I know who come from the Midwest and frankly even out west that ride in the mountains that they're not always thinking about kind of the safety aspect of it. And so tell me a little bit about the riding gear you have from a safety standpoint. Do you ride with Beacon, Shovel, Pro? Like, just tell me the kind of gear that you ride with, and then what kind of, training or planning, or do you check the avalanche forecast in advance? Talk me through kind of like from a safety planning standpoint of how to get to the trip and kind of what you have for the trip, and then we'll shift gears into when you're out on the trip. What are you guys doing to plan and observe and to check out the terrain and make sure you're riding safe areas as well? So
Yeah. So first thing foremost, it's mandatory. Like everybody that we go with and we get into any sort of zone remotely off the trail, shovel, pro, beacon. The pack isn't a super big deal, but everybody's running one anyway. But
yeah,
absolutely, everybody hits a beacon check in the morning. We're all running radios. The Polaris guys on the newer stuff have the 7S2, which is super legit. That's an awesome tool for finding people. I'm probably going to switch and not switch. I'm going to get a one of those Trail Tech Voyagers or whatever they're called next year, I
yeah,
think, just so it can be linked up on that screen too. Because there's sometimes you get into spots or, whatever happens and somebody forgot to charge a radio and it dies kind of deal. Just makes it easier to stay together and find groups and all that stuff. Yeah, we all go to a Mike Duffy course at a local dealership for just the awareness training, and we're pretty adamant on a lot of people. Like we're always checking social media and stuff. Like what is that? Friends of the Gallatin there are always posting like updates and
yep,
stuff and big slides, everything like that. We're usually pretty aware of snowpack while we're out there. Like a lot, wherever we're going, we usually follow pretty closely to local businesses, guides, that kind of stuff on their snow reports, packs, everything like that. We know where to go, where not to go, what to look out for, like slopes to stay off, all that kind of stuff. Checking the forecast through our phone, stuff like that. A couple of us are running Onyx, so
okay,
we can really look at like before we even get into zones. It's huge. You can look at the slope factor, run out everything before you even get there,
yeah.
so you don't have to be at the base of the hill or somewhere and figure out it's not where you want to be before you get there, kind of deal. And we're usually pretty good about hitting up local people that we know have been on the snow too, and just seeing if they'll share where's a good place to go or not place to go, stuff like that. We use all of the resources we can pretty much.
Yeah, I was just going to show. I actually use Onyx myself also, and I'll show people a little bit of what you're talking about. And so, for those who don't know, Onyx is a great app. Like I finally, between the off-roading, the jeeping that I do, and finding dirt trails, there's a dirt mode and a snow mode. You can see I've got my screen in snow mode down at the bottom there right now, and it shows you all kinds of like hill aspects, the steepness of the hill. There's filters in there for like the avalanche conditions, and so
Yep.
great tool as well. And the avalanche condition is tied to all your local avalanche centers that whatever riding area you're in. And so I agree, it's a great tool, great planning tool there as well. And great job going to kind of the avalanche awareness classes. When I talked to you this week, it sounds like you guys are making plans to go to a full on snow training at some point
Oh,
in the near future, right?
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
Now that we've kind of been holding off for a little bit just to make sure everybody was like toughing it out. Like they wanted to be a part of doing this for the next 5, 10, whatever years. Like, so we could get a pretty legit group of guys that were going to be serious about it before, because it's a pretty big move for us from up
yeah.
here to go to on the snow courses. So absolutely in the cards for next year is to get an on the snow course
Yeah.
and really make sure we're getting legit training and everything as we're stepping up our riding abilities and everything too.
Yeah, and that's something that some people may take for granted or maybe just not even aware of is that to go to an on the snow level 1 class or a level 2 class that you would take, it would be an Airy class, a Mike Duffy class, whoever, is like technically you need to be out in avalanche terrain on the snow in order to do that. You can't just go to some, like you can do awareness classes and some basic companion rescue stuff sometimes. Like I actually did that at ERX Off-Road Park in Elk River, Minnesota, where
Yep.
Mike Duffy was there and he did like a companion rescue class, I think, at one time. And you can do those kind of classes there, but to do your certification classes with a level 1, level 2, you have to be out in avalanche terrain because you have to be able to make observations, to be able to travel through terrain. And so, for someone like Seth here that is traveling out for maybe only 1 week per year, to take 2 to 3 days out of your riding trip to go do that, that's a big commitment, a big group. And so I commend you guys for doing it. And I kind of challenge you, Seth, to make sure that you guys execute on that and follow through with it. I'd love to hear back from you when you guys get that scheduled. And if there's anything I can do, and anybody who's watching, if any of you guys need support in scheduling or planning an avalanche class, depending on where you're going, it doesn't matter what state you're going to out west. Likely I have a connection somewhere in one of those states that can help you get scheduled for an avalanche class. And that's one of the things that I love to do, is just to connect people with the safety information that they need. So very good. All right. Well, what else do we have here? We've talked about the safety gear. I know, like, you've been just a super passionate sledder, and it's kind of overflowed into a little bit of your idea of, like, what do you want to, quote unquote, what do you want to do when you grow up? We all say that when we're young, and heck, even at 49 years old, I still wonder what I'm going to do when I grow up someday, right? But you've kind of your passion, you've turned it from like just a hobby, something you're doing for fun, into maybe fun business, right? So tell us a little bit about kind of this business that you've kicked off. And if I remember right, you told me you actually created an official business, an LLC. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I created the LLC while I was still full time at RDO. I
Yeah.
think it was November of 22. So it's been a little over a year now. And I left RDO on September, or in early September of 23. And I went straight to the farm for harvest, and I just pushed super hard because harvest started up right when I left there, basically. And I just pushed super hard through harvest and got into here. And I've been every day, it's like just trying to get the shop built, because it's really wild. I came into the shop and it wasn't ready for me to just like move in. I've been trying to move in, take out, and do stuff all at the same time in here.
Yeah.
So it's been, if in retrospect, it's been fast, but it doesn't feel like it's been fast because
Yeah.
there's so much stuff going on. But it's definitely going to be a huge push all summer. Well, it's slow season for sledding, to try and get it built up and really ready for the next season. And just really trying to get in with some other brands, companies, stuff like that, and get some inventory built up and really hit it hard next year. Be
Yeah.
super ready for it.
Well, you have a pretty decent list of businesses that you've already started to work with too. I know you rattled them off to me the other day, but do you have them in front of you there too? Do you have them where you can share some of the different type of products that you're sharing? I know you said Cheetah and Extreme Air Vents, some of those different
Yeah.
companies. Do you want to give a quick list of who you're working with, and how, if somebody's interested, they can reach out to you?
Oh yeah. So on the wall behind me, you can see just a little bit of the inventory I got left here. But yeah, a big one for me has been Jaws. They were kind of the first people I got in with. They've been super good, easy to work with. They're awesome people. I started doing Cheetah Factory racing stuff, Cobra Cord out of Minnesota with recoil ropes and handles. Extreme Air Vents. Tom's a great guy, super helpful, willing to pretty much, if you got an idea too, he's really up to listen. Great guy to work with. Probably forgetting somebody. Oh boy. But
Well, you rattled them off to me the other day. Let me see if I can help you out here. So, Cobra Pull Cord, Sledhead Racing was one of them. Did you mention them
oh
already?
yeah, yep. I just started working with him too.
Yep.
John's been awesome at Sledhead. Super excited to start running his products too. They're tested and true, and he really knows what he's talking about and everything. And he does a lot of the same kind of stuff I do too. So he's super
Yeah.
willing to share and give me insight and all that stuff. And he's somewhat local to me too. He's only a couple hours down the road, and kind
Yeah.
of southern Minnesota. So it's awesome to have a kind of a legend like him at my back and helping me with stuff like this. And it makes me a lot more at ease knowing that I can have a good source like him to have help get me where I want to be.
Yeah. No, very good. Very good. What else do we have to chat about? I think we've gotten through most of the list tonight, everything we wanted to chat through. Is there anything on top of your mind now that you want to give a shout out on, or is there anybody you want to give some thank yous or shout outs to before we wrap it up, or let people know how they can find you?
I'm currently working on doing something with a website and a
Okay.
logo. And after I get done with that, it'll be a lot easier to probably find me, and publicity and everything will probably pick up a little bit like that. But you can find my Facebook page, personal social media pages, anything like that, and just shoot me a message. My phone number is posted up on them and everything like that. If you have any questions or want anything like that, just hit me up. I'm pretty responsive. I should get back to you pretty quick. A lot of different things are probably going to come down the pipe in the next 6 months for me. So if there's something you're looking for and I don't have it, let me know, and it'll probably change by next season. Hopefully,
Yeah.
a lot of things I'm looking forward to.
Yep.
And big shout out to my family for helping with the shop and being super lenient with everything. It's come a long way, and it's super cool to see like this happen. Like I didn't know how this was going to work out. It was just kind of an idea in the back of my head, and it's actually
Yeah.
picking up into something. So it hopefully I'd be really excited to see how it grows in the next year. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic too. And I think I told you on the phone, and for everybody who's watching, like I actually have two sons that are about your age. I've got one son who's 20 years old, got a son who's 22 years old, and I think of myself when I was your age, and I know there's moments in my life where somebody believed in me, gave me a shot, gave me a chance. Whether it be job for me, a job. In your case, we gave you an interview today, gave you a little exposure.
Yep.
I just think of this too. I hope this will be a memorable moment for you in the rest of your life, the rest of your sled career, the passion and moments there too. And, if today here we've had a small impact on your future success, I know that's something I'm happy to help with. So I hope it works out for you. So,
Absolutely. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, it's been great. This is kind of the first publicity thing I've done related to the business, and it's cool to be doing something that's not just personal. It's more industry growth related than
Yeah.
personal, and it's awesome. Like I get to see a lot different perspective on everything now, and getting in with like industry people like that. It's pretty cool
Yep.
to see how this all works.
Yeah, very cool. So if anybody's watching this for the first time, because Seth here, just know that our show typically is snowmobile safety, education, positive growth of the sport. Live large, just so everybody knows a little bit about what that means. Is what I tell everybody live large means is live life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference to others. And hopefully through these shows, through whether I do it for Seth here, Seth does it for somebody else, pays it forward. We're all here to make this sport of snowmobiling a better place and a safer place for everybody, so we can make every trip a round trip. So, all right, everybody. Any final words, Seth, before we wrap it up?
Thanks for having me. This is great,
Yeah.
and look forward to seeing more of your shows.
Yep. Thanks so much. All right. God bless everybody. Live large. Have a great night.